Thanks again for coming to today's webinar and giving up some of your evening time. So as you know, this is a webinar that's probably a bit different to the curriculum that you usually have on your course. So this is going to be about physiotherapy in the media, and myself, Steph Burns, student coordinator, will be facilitating, and I'm really pleased to introduce you to John Ryan, the head of press and PR at the CSP. A lot of articles that you may have seen and news clips probably had John involved in some way. So here he is in person, the man behind all of that.
Thanks, Steph. Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for coming along tonight. I know that probably when you signed up for this, it was hammering down with rain last week. So now that we've got a heat wave on our hands, I appreciate you sticking with it and coming along to see what I've got to say. Okay, so physio in the media. A bit about me. My name's John Ryan, head of press and PR at the CSP. I lead a small team in the press office. We've got, there's myself, there's Sulian Allen, who's senior digital media officer. And then we have two senior media officers who job share. That's Lauren Connors and Jennifer Maxfield. So between us, we're responsible for effectively promoting the media to the external world. So we don't have any involvement in frontline. We don't have any involvement in any other kind of member comms. Our focus is very much on raising the profile of physiotherapy and the physiotherapy workforce to the external world. So really, this is our kind of mission. Really, we to promote physiotherapy. It's in three parts: the professionals who are delivering those services. So, who are the physio workforce? What do they do? What are their skills? Where do they work? And what are the specialisms that they work in? Talk about the ways of delivering those services. So, obviously, at the moment, there's a big push on rehab, and so we've got our community rehab campaign. And we're really pushing hard on those community rehab services that are providing such critical work at the moment. But also things like first contact physiotherapists. That's another new way of delivering physio and another key area of our work. Finally, the last bit's probably one of the stranger parts of my job in PR terms. It's to provide, to convey the expert advice and guidance that the physios can provide to patients and the public. The reason I say that's a bit of a weird thing is that normally in a PR job, you're trying to get people through the doors, you're trying to get people to attend whatever it is, you're trying to get people to buy your service, to really kind of take whatever you're selling. But a lot of the advice that we give out around things like back pain or strengthening, things like that, it's all geared towards actually stopping people needing to see a physio in many instances, or at least to stop them needing to enter the system. And so it's one of the sort of stranger ones where our success rate would be that there's less work for our members. But when you consider that the NHS in particular is so overstretched, you can see why that's an important goal. So we've got different audiences that we aim our work at primarily. Probably fall into three groups. Firstly, the general public. Now within that's obviously a large, 60 million people. So we break it down into groups. Might be people with long-term conditions. Might be people with a specific condition. Might be older people. Might be younger people. But we sort of continually trying to break down those audiences so we can find out a bit more about those audiences and have specific messaging for them. Decision makers in healthcare systems, whether it's in the NHS or external, we're trying to make the case for physios so that they either commission a service, design a service, give the green light to a service, recognise the value of what physio brings, and then our work in the press office is really important to do that, to try and educate people about what physio does based on the data, based on the research, and based on case study examples. And the final group of audiences, really, politicians. Obviously, some audiences are more appealing than others to go to, but MPs, councillors, MSPs, MLAs in the countries, they're important to the future of physiotherapy because they can shape the funding of it, they can shape the mandate and so on. So they're an important audience. They're also a really important audience for what we want to achieve locally. Going to an MP with a case around a service that needs to be safe, for instance, that's a really good good thing to do, because then they can bring pressure to bear in their area, and they're also wary of being seen as opposing or supporting cuts to a service and opposing what we're calling for. So there's pressure you can bring to bear there, and one of the examples I'll give later references that. This is all about physio in the media. Media relations is clearly a key part of PR, but I just wanted to just touch on a couple of other things that we do just to give you a rounder picture. Events, this year events aren't really taking place as we'd expect them to, but in the normal course of events, we'd be looking to try and get people speaker slots. We'd be trying to get them onto panels, where they've got a really sort of important story to tell to a key audience. We'll be trying to get them to do that. We might take a stand in the exhibition area to get people signing up, or to start conversations with people who we can follow up with after the event. We might hold a fringe meeting at the event. These are small meetings that happen either in the evening or during the breaks, just around, as it suggests, the fringe of the event, where you've got the chance to kind of have a bit more face-to-face networking with some of your audience. Final thing on there, I've included under events, because stunts often take place outside party conferences, for example, or outside major conferences. And these are very hit or miss. In the healthcare comms setting, I guess you'd call it, there was a real kind of passion for doing die-ins at one point a few years ago. Quite a few kind of campaign groups would cover themselves in red paint, lie down outside hospitals to protest against cuts, and I always thought it was in horrendous taste, bearing in mind grieving relatives could be walking past them having actually lost someone coming out of a hospital. So I wasn't a big fan of those, and I never really saw them working well. But stunts as a campaigning tool, as a PR tool, should always be considered, because there's some excellent ones you can do that really draw attention to your message and to your campaign. Something we're doing more of in terms of PR is creating our own digital media assets. This is something we've really kicked on with in the last few years. The big benefit of those are, they take you direct to the public. They give you that kind of maneuver around the media. So what we're trying to do often is going to the journalist and saying, look, can you cover our story? And it's hit or miss. It's never been harder to actually get media coverage than in the last few years, because everyone's got a press office. There's far fewer journalists, fewer publications. It's really difficult to get coverage now. And so by creating your own content, you can go direct to the public and have total control over what's in it. It also means you can understand the journey that you're taking that person on. I want to give you some examples of what we've done that sort of demonstrate that point. So Rehab Matters was a film we produced a few years ago. We played it to MPs in Parliament, and then we were able to kind of track how many of those MPs then took action either to do a service visit or to follow up with us for a briefing and a meeting about those about those issues. And we wouldn't have known that if we'd just put out a story. We couldn't have been able to attribute it to that. We knew who had attended the premiere and who was now taking action. Never Too Late was the Christmas film we did 2 Christmases ago, I think it was. The purpose of that was that we wanted to promote the benefits of strengthening for older people. And we had 6 exercises that we wanted people to visit. We knew that a Christmas film was something that was going to capture the attention, and that people would then click through a link to find out the exercises. We got about 500,000 views of the film. We had tens of thousands of people click through to the webpage with the exercises on. What was great about that was that they were spending an average of 5 minutes on the webpage. The average normally is around a minute. So we were pretty sure that people were on there and looking at the exercises and doing the exercises while they were on that page. So that was a real success. Our Love Activity campaign and other campaigning, that's another example of producing a digital asset like that people can click through, find out more information. Then we can see which pages they go on to see and how long they spend on those pages. It's really kind of useful insight. Are our resources connecting with the audience. Funny animations are something that we've used quite a bit. You might recognise this one from the back pain animation we did probably 4 years ago now. We've got a new one coming out tomorrow about COVID rehab, the needs of patients, and the kinds of symptoms people can expect to have after COVID. So look out for that and please share it. But it's another thing that we want to sort of drag people into our website so we can educate them about the profession. But of course, our main purpose for tonight is to talk about physio in the media, and it is still our main channel for communicating with audiences. The media, whether that's national or local, hold huge sway over public opinion, over the opinion of decision makers. So they're a really important channel for us to go to. In terms of who we do it with, when we're talking about the media here, TV and radio outlets. So local radio's still a big deal, but our main targets are people like Sky News, BBC News, BBC Breakfast, GMB, those kinds of big shows. I don't know if, I think Rachel Moses actually was due to join today, a council member, and she was on GMB a few years ago. Not our doing, all her own doing, but fantastic to see her on there. But newspapers, national and local, including local again, because particularly thinking about those politicians, if a story's in the Guardian, then maybe, or the Times, maybe 5 or 10% of their constituency might read it at most. If it's in a local newspaper, then every person who's read that is a potential voter. So it's crucially important that they have the local papers on side, and so you can use that to kind of get them onto your, to line up behind your campaign. And then digital media, sites like Huffington Post, Mail Online, I'm including there because although it's part of the Daily Mail, they have a separate operation entirely, separate journalists, separate approach and all that sort of stuff. And podcasts are something we're going to have to do a better job of getting into in the coming years, both as getting speaker slots or getting people being interviewed on podcasts, but also perhaps doing some advertising. How we interact with the media, 3 ways. Generally, we get a lot of calls from journalists. In fact, during since the lockdown began, our calls from journalists have increased by over 100%. So very busy, but tends to be journalists ringing up saying, I'd like to speak to a physio about, about back pain. I'd like to speak to physio about respiratory physio. I'd like to speak to physio about what sort of rehab people should get after stroke, that kind of thing. So our general process there is to find the expert, set them up with it, and arrange that interview. Other times it might be, what is your position on X, Y, or Z? In that case, it's about us preparing a statement, giving it to that journalist, or setting up an interview with someone like our chief exec or, a key officer at the CSP. On a more proactive front, it might be stories that we've written ourselves. We're sending out as press releases. 2 weeks ago, we did a story about, we got some physios to look at the top 100 YouTube videos for back pain. And they found that 60% had false or misleading information. So we did a story saying, don't just follow any old bollocks you find online, go to trusted sources. We've got our own MSK hub, and directing traffic into that. So, that's an example of a proactive thing to promote our messaging. Doesn't always go to plan. Today, funnily enough, being a perfect example, we had a press release lined up to go out on Thursday, which was to be promoting the extent of rehab need there is after COVID. So we'd done the stats. We'd worked out 6 in 10 patients would be leaving hospital potentially needing rehab, and good story, great to go, great case study, all that stuff. This morning, the Royal College of Radiologists put out a virtually identical story about rehab need and just completely spiked our guns. So that ruined our plans for Thursday and made us go to point 3 on here, which is responding to other people's stories of quotes. So what we've done in actual fact is just repurposed our story to say, look, in light of this, it's not just about X, it's also about Y and Z, and managed to hopefully get our messaging into some of the stories that will happen as a result of that one. And on other occasions we might write a letter to the editor so that on the letters page you've got a response to the story. Sometimes we might write a blog when there's a particularly urgent point that we want to make and we feel that would be the best way to do it. Physio in the media during COVID-19. So I mean, this has actually been a perfect example of, the different things we're trying to do, because there's been so much coverage that, I can give you examples of each. But it's been a privilege really to be working in the press office during this time, representing an incredible profession doing some remarkable work. There's never really been a greater spotlight on physio under, obviously awful circumstances, but it's been really good to be able to kind of get some credit for the work that's going on, to be able to shine a spotlight on that work, and so that physios are receiving the recognition and the praise for the job they're doing. We quickly worked out when the pandemic struck that we wanted to go on two initial themes with our coverage. Firstly, it was around that very specific role that physios were playing in the response to COVID. So that was physios in intensive care, physios on the front line, whether they're redeployed or whether they're dealing with patients in intensive care. We wanted to really let people know what they were doing. Of the many different areas of physio, probably respiratory physio is one of the lesser known areas. And so one of the key things was about educating journalists, and Lauren and Jen, the two senior media officers, they spent like a long time on the phone just talking to journalists, just trying to sort of, pitch them and tell them about what great work was going on and why it's not just about doctors and nurses, it's about these physios doing this incredible work. And thankfully, we were successful in that as a result. You can see a piece there, Guardian, I'm not sure where that other piece, Sky News there, we had BBC. But the other clear theme that was needed was that there were going to be millions of people stuck at home, whether that was shielding, whether they had been furloughed, lost their job, or simply home working like many of us. And we wanted to use that as an opportunity to get that important message out about the importance of staying active, keep moving. We were all under really kind of tight restrictions at that point, but even if it was just about getting up from your desk every half hour, 45 minutes or so, or taking advantage of that once a day we were allowed out for a walk, doing that would make a big difference for your physical and mental health. So we did that, and it also gave us a chance to kind of knock down some of the myths around posture, which was quite helpful. We were able to say, look, there is no perfect posture. It's about being comfortable and making sure you're not staying in the same position for too long. So we've got some really good pieces from there. It's a good example there at the Times. In terms of shining a light on that frontline role, it's also about things like personal protective equipment. We had something in the Independent here. It was also in the Mail, loads of other regional papers, just showing our warnings about this, because they just weren't getting the protection they deserved. And it was important for us to do that. The same went for the NHS visas story. You might have seen that, where the government was strangely vague repeatedly about which professions would actually be covered by this visa. So we had to keep pushing and pushing. We got some media coverage just to say, this needs to apply to physios as well. That was good. Obviously, as the pandemic progressed and patients started to leave hospital, we knew that it was important for us to start shining a light on the rehab needs that they face, and also really kind of showcase the work that was being done in hospitals and then once people left as well. So this was a piece that we did with Dominic Hughes from the BBC. He spent a lot of time understanding it, going and speaking to services. Also, we did a nice piece here with Sean Linton at the Indy, just to keep that sort of, this idea around rehabilitation. I don't think people really understand, the public understand we don't really know a great deal about it, but also sort of decision makers, perhaps. It's often been a Cinderella service in the past. We wanted to show just how integral it is to the whole COVID pathway. And, we were successful in doing that with some of this coverage. Okay. Things stopped. Oh, not too far. Here we go. Right. I'm going to hope this is going to work. I want to play a video now. Yes, there it is. Right. It's about 5 minutes long, but it's pretty amazing, and hopefully, it's worth the time to watch. It really kind of showcases the incredible work that physios are doing with patients, and it's a nice example of how we work with the media to be able to showcase that.
You might feel a bit dizzy or lightheaded at first, that's completely normal.
A lot of these patients remember perhaps coming into hospital feeling unwell, being very, very breathless, but then waking up almost transported into the future 2 weeks, 3 weeks with no recollection of what's actually happened to them. They're scared, they're frightened, they're disorientated, they don't have family members around, they have staff around them in full protective equipment. So lots of reassurance needed.
John's right behind you.
Lots of explanations about where they are, that they're safe, and actually why they're so weak, why they can't talk.
Again, try and kick my hand. Well, get your own backside. Fantastic, well done. Push me away. Well, you mean that as well. Pop your hands down.
So a lot of these patients with COVID-19 are coming around very weak and dependent on the ventilator.
Might feel a bit dizzy again.
A lot of these patients will require mechanical ventilation, and they'll also be put to sleep to kind of recover from their illness. And this is often in a region of 7 to 10 days as a minimum. We know they can lose something in the region of around 20% of their muscle in the first 7 days of that admission. And the challenge then is to start this rehabilitation process, start that recovery, hopefully get patients out of bed, sitting in chairs, walking to rebuild that muscle strength, but also make some progress with reducing the ventilation.
That was really good.
So how was that, Robert? Good man.
So I'm just about to get ready and head on to our intensive care unit, which at its peak had over 100 ventilated patients with COVID-19. Thankfully that's reduced slightly now, so we're approximately 80 patients. So the physiotherapists will, in the morning and in the evening, do a ward round just to make sure patients are on the right setting, they're getting enough oxygen on board, but also the lungs are being protected to help with that recovery. One of the downsides of using ventilation is you're forcing positive pressure into somebody's chest, which in itself could be quite damaging. So the ventilation itself needs to be managed quite finely, within the balance of ensuring you get enough oxygen on board, we're not causing any further damage to the lungs.
Yeah.
How's that head feel? Bit dizzy? Okay. Nice slow breaths in and out. What I want to do is just square you up so you're in the best position. Just lean to your left. There we go. The way to look at it now is perhaps not how you felt a couple of weeks before you came in. It's each day at a time, and every day you're improving and moving forward. Cup of tea.
Yorkshire brew, surely.
Okay, Robert, we're going to have a little bit of a walk now. And then really steady. Top. You can take those handles. Keep your head up nice and tall. You start taking those gentle steps, okay? Good work now. How do those legs feel? All great, yeah. As I say, keep yourself up nice and tall. See if we can get right to the end of this corridor. Robert, you're a superstar. Well done. And stop there. Bring the chair in. Let's have a little sit down. Robert, what feels the hardest part of that? Is it the breathing or the leg weakness? Leg weakness. Well, that's good. Building that strength and building that confidence.
We've had no patients pass away today. We've had 6 people discharged to the ward. It's probably the busiest I think work has ever been. And what's really struck me is just that sense of togetherness. I don't think I've ever worked in such a kind of coordinated and well-structured team. Everybody's pulling together, everybody's supporting each other. It's a really nice feeling, it's really positive, but likewise the work is just exhausting and feels a little bit relentless.
After you get those legs warming up, we're just going to try and have a few steps going forward, okay? Feet stand up, and first to get you nice and steady. And just keep yourself up nice and tall and proud, okay? Try and get those legs going. There we go.
Wonderful. Well done.
Put your nothing right out.
That's it, you can sit down.
Well done.
Yeah, fantastic.
How does that feel?
That's good.
How did your breathing feel?
Surprising. Okay. my family, and I have been making goals. Find that's something nice to look forward to.
The progress in the last week has been fantastic. Okay.
Yeah. More than welcome. It's been our pleasure.
Just touch there on the ways that physios can help us, and members, and when you graduate and enter the workforce, how you'll be able to help us too. I mean, it's three ways as always. Spokespeople, so discuss there about answering media inquiries, setting up interviews, that kind of thing. Whether that might be a live interview with a TV channel, pre-record with a radio one, or just a phone call with the journalist. Those are the different types of interviews we ask people to be as spokespeople. Content creators, great example there with a video, doing the video diary, but also just helping us, come up with new advice for patients who are homeworking, or developing new exercises for people to do some strengthening, preparing a new leaflet, a new animation. We can't do that by ourselves. We need the members to tell us, what that should be, and so that's where it's a really kind of crucial partnership that we form. Finally, insight providers, which is a bit of a strange one, but really, it's so important to get that feedback from physios who are seeing patients. What are you seeing at the moment? Are you seeing patients coming in with a particular problem? Are there commissioning issues? Are there, are too many patients missing out on various things? All of this information is crucial for us to hear, so that we can start to build stories around that and propose answers to it as well. But another way that we ask members to do that is to work with us on local issues, and this is where our stewards network are fantastic. Hopefully some of you are already stewards, and hopefully you'll consider taking on that role when you enter the workforce as well. It's a fantastic role, and it's a great network we've got. Where it comes to the fore is when we have an issue like we did a few years ago, which was in mid-Essex in England. There was a commissioner who, they were facing an awful kind of financial situation, and felt that there was probably one way to do it was to either reduce physio services, drastically reduce it, or to remove the service entirely. Now that's clearly just an unacceptable situation for us. But thankfully, a steward in the area let us know at a very early stage, so we were able to kind of pull together a quick campaign to work on that. Now, No Physio, No Way was the brand we quickly settled on for that campaign. And we attacked it in a number of different ways, through local media, lobbying MPs, lobbying councillors, and also we did some polling with the public here. This ran in all the local press. It showed that a certain percentage of the population, if they couldn't access physio, they'd just go straight to A&E. So what we were demonstrating there was you were robbing Peter to pay Paul. By cutting these services, you were just forcing pressure up elsewhere. So it was really good to be able to highlight that. But crucially, all this was backed up by members in the area just getting out into the streets at the weekends, getting local residents signing petitions, making sure this branding was visible in the area, kind of making a nuisance of themselves, really, because that's what a lot of this comes down to, particularly when you're doing local campaigning. It's really just making the situation uncomfortable for the person that you're trying to, you're opposing, essentially. And ultimately, the campaign was a success. We were able to get the, this story was in Frontline January, lifting the threat to physio services, but by around sort of February, March, I think it had improved even further, and that they were not only not cutting the service, but are actually investing in it and introducing self-referral, I think, in that area. So we had made such a good case by working with our members, being able to provide service data and all the rest of it, that we'd actually turned a really bad situation into quite a positive one. So lovely example of working with our members locally to achieve the ends. And I just want to say here as well that it's really important that it's not just seen as something that's done in the bad times. if you get awards, if you have a really sort of successful 6 months and see after an introduction of a new service and you see a big drop in waiting times, things like that, it's important to go to your trust press office and say, look, this is what we've achieved. They're always looking for positive news, and also that safeguards you for the future. If you get the coverage of you being an award-winning service, when you get if you do get threatened with something like what happened in Essex, it's not just a physio service that's being cut, it's an award-winning physio service that's being cut. And that puts more pressure on the decision makers, because the press include that. MPs are wondering, why are you going to cut something so successful? And it's just a really important way to safeguard you for the future, as well as just to promote your service. And it's a nice way to get recognition in your area. Okay, the last thing I wanted to discuss now, Black Lives Matter. I think it's really important to just have a discussion here about the representation of BAME physios in the media, and also anything else that as a press office we can be doing to increase representation and to improve outcomes as well. So obviously this has been a profound few weeks. I can't remember a movement inspiring such a deep sense of self-reflection across society. As individuals, as a white man, I'm thinking, what more should I be doing? What am I doing wrong? What should I be doing? It's all about listening, learning, educating myself, thinking, as a father, how am I raising my boys? What more can I be doing there? As a comms professional, what can I be doing to use the privilege I've got, the platform I've got? But we've also, discussed it as a team, as a press office. What else can we be doing? What are we doing at the moment that's going well? What's not going so well? And what should we be reflecting on there? And then obviously as an organisation, CSP is doing a lot of soul searching, and, we're sort of looking at all levels, everything we do internally, externally, to see how we can improve. We all need to do better, and it's only through us doing better that we're going to have a better society. And so I want to talk now just about some of the specific things that we can be doing as a press office. To be clear, this is just what our team can be doing. We can use our platform to promote BAME voices. That's physios and patients. We've got that platform. We can be showcasing the work, and also making sure our messaging is connecting with patients. We can create opportunities for BAME physios to develop new skills in media and influencing. This is important because it's not just about increasing the representation, just pushing people out into the media, because that's just tokenism. What we want to do is make sure we're offering the training and support that goes with it, so that it's not just about the media inquiry, it's about that career development opportunity that comes from doing that kind of work. We can also use our influence I've got there at the end to achieve social goals, and that's probably more going to be through the various alliances we're part of. We're a trade union as well as a professional body, and that offers us the opportunity to be in many really good alliances that are pushing for social change. But it's just about what more can we be doing on those fronts. Can we be doing more to tackle the racism faced by NHS staff? Can we be doing more to tackle the inequalities that are affecting BAME communities disproportionately and so tragically, as we've seen with COVID-19? How we can do that? Well, we've got a roster of spokespeople that we call on when the media call us. But what we haven't done in the past is produce that in a booklet that we send out actively to all journalists. So what we're going to be doing is presenting all the national media and other sort of trade media with our spokespeople list. It's going to have bits about their expertise and when they're available and so on. But that's going to have a strong representation of BAME physios in it. I think that's a really important way to have journalists calling on them more often, but also raising awareness of their role in the profession, and hopefully then increasing the visibility that we'll see. We're going to be auditing our external comms. What that means is our media coverage, our social media output, and also any new digital media assets. But what that's going to be is not just about the numbers. It's not just about the numbers of appearances on TV or in a newspaper. It's also going to be about the messaging we're pushing, and also the topics we're raising. are we doing enough to address health inequalities? We've got a Right to Rehab campaign that is going to be crucial, absolutely crucial if it succeeds for addressing some of those inequalities. But it's only going to succeed if in our messaging it's really a prominent consideration, and also so that's going to be an important part of any sort of audit we do of our comms. How often are we raising those issues? Where are we raising them? And to what success are we having with raising those topics? Because we can listen, we can learn, but really this is now about action, and that's what we want to check that we're doing. Final point here is critical. The report from Professor Kevin Fenton last week highlighted the problems in BAME communities in regards to campaign materials from public health bodies, so including Public Health England, but also the NHS, but also people like the CSP, anyone who's got a sort of public-facing health comms. Doesn't appear to be a lot of campaigns just aren't connecting with BAME communities, and that's because they just don't see themselves in the imagery that's used, but also in the language. They're just not culturally sensitive, and they're just clearly not being designed in partnership with those communities. So a good example of what we're doing is we're working with Sport England on a strengthening project. Hopefully some of you have seen the promotion we've done of that. As part of that, we've been doing interviews with patients in their homes, in-depth interviews. Most of these took place before the lockdown, thankfully, but we've been doing focus groups virtually since then as well. There's been over-representation of BAME communities in those focus groups and interviews. We've made sure of that. And then also, sorry, I've got a fly coming across. But also on socio-economic grounds as well, we had an over-representation in those groups. The importance there is to understand more about why campaigns aren't connecting, and also to understand the various barriers that are in place, some that we put up ourselves, but also that others are facing, and what we can do to come around that. Why is this so important? I mean, hopefully it goes without saying the moral and ethical case for it. I mean, it's just incumbent upon us all, as I said, to listen, to educate ourselves, to learn, and then to act. But specifically about the actions the press office can be taking, we want to create role models. Something come through clear as day in the discussions on social media in particular in the last few weeks, that BAME physios, either at the start of their career or studying, or even before considering entering the profession, just aren't seeing themselves reflected in the profession. So we want to create those role models so they can see what the pathway is and that it is a profession for them. We also need to be demonstrating to the outside world that this is a diverse profession that we've got. We want to contribute to society-wide change. This is again where the alliances come in. Working with trade unions, working with professional bodies, influencing the government, influencing the NHS. But finally, to deliver better outcomes for patients. I've just discussed there the reports, the findings in the Fenton report. Horrifying disparities, and communications was at the heart of a lot of those problems. And so, if we can start to deliver better comms for our members to use and direct to the public, then as a press office, hopefully we can contribute to people having better health outcomes down the line. That's something that we take seriously. As I say, it's been a period of really sort of deep self-reflection as an individual. But as a team, it's something we know that we've all got to do better, and we are determined to do so. So that actually is the end of what I was going to discuss. Now, I think there's some questions. I'm sorry if I didn't answer them as we go along.
We got a question from Rachel. What's the best way for students to get involved in promoting physiotherapy and these campaigns?
The most immediate way is to be sharing our stuff, particularly on social media, particularly on Facebook. If a physio retweets something on Twitter, the likelihood is that 80-90% of their followers are also physios, whereas on Facebook, you'll probably be friends with other physios, but the large majority of people will be non-physios, so you get into the public that way, and then they start to share it and it spreads further and further. So just sharing our messaging, sharing our campaign resources is a really good way. But also, just really kind of beating the drum at every opportunity. If you're seeing things, when you're on placements that are, a great story, or you're seeing things that are, alarming, that you feel we should be shining a light on, then please get in touch. We're always keen to hear more. So I think that, probably the sharing of resources is the most practical, but keeping an eye out for stuff. Just to, I talked about that kind of role as insight provider. That's really important.
Thank you. And we got another question of what makes a good spokesperson, and is there any training or I guess resources available to help with that?
Well, I mean, spokespeople, we kind of have people in different roles. So if an inquiry comes in that needs an answer in the next kind of hour or two, we have probably 4 or 5 physios that we know are available at very short notice and can quickly turn that around. So that kind of availability is really, really helpful, but we recognise that's not something that's everyone's available for. In terms of what makes them a good spokesperson in general, it's having an expertise of the area is really important, but it's also about remembering that when you're talking to the journalist, it's no different really to when you're talking to a patient. So if you're seeing a patient and you're explaining to them their back pain, or you're talking to them what their rehab needs are going to be, you're probably going to be speaking in really kind of plain terms and easily understood, really sort of accessible language. Say if you're doing a radio interview and someone's driving home listening to it, they don't want to be hearing about the sort of technical language. They want to be hearing it in that plain language. So really, our best spokespeople are always mindful of that ability to just explain it in clear, plain terms, and really not sort of elevating the journalist to any kind of scientific mastermind. It's about the person behind the journalist. The final thing as well, actually, I do need to say about that is that many physios worry about what other physios are going to say if they go into the media. We could put someone up on BBC Breakfast and they wouldn't worry about the 6 million people watching on TV. It'd be the sort of 2,000 physios who might also catch it that's really kind of worrying them, and that's quite debilitating at times. But it doesn't need to be that way, because we're preparing people to go online and preparing people to go into these interviews, and also you're doing really good work for the profession. You're showcasing the skills of the profession. So don't worry about what physios say, just concentrate on getting the job done. In terms of training, we do training. We offer there's a kind of like 2-hour, I won't call it a masterclass because that'd be a bit big-headed, but it's a all-in-one type session where you learn the sort of fundamentals of doing interviews and media relations. What we're looking at doing actually is trying to make that available online, so you can just download it. Particularly, in the current climate, we can't have people traveling to just come to this session. So we could try and make it a sort of downloadable module online, but also run it more at kind of our events, like Physio UK and stuff.
And we've got a question from Ian. He'd like to know if you feel the profession gets enough credit within media, and if you feel the impression of what physiotherapists do has changed in recent years, particularly during COVID. I know there's been a lot online around more emphasis on GPs and nurses, and rather than AHPs.
No, I don't think get enough credit, but I also don't think there can be enough credit just for the work that's going on. Doctors and nurses is a phrase that everyone grows up, and it's something that's a really hard thing to crack. What I do think has happened in the last couple of months is a greater spotlight on the profession, particularly respiratory physios, and that's been a great thing. I think that has really cut through. I think we're starting to see the language changing when, say, Simon Stevens from NHS England is talking. He's talking about physios now. We're starting to hear physios. We're starting to get the big media people coming to us proactively to say, look, can we do something about physio now? That has changed. So that is improved. I think also we've seen a difference in the last few years about coverage of MSK stuff. We produced our Mythbuster resources a few years ago with the intention of trying to educate journalists, trying to get fewer myths reported. Now, there's still some horror shows in some of the coverage that happens, but it's far less regular now than it was. And part of that is that all the people who are now our spokespeople talking about MSK stuff, they kind of unofficially sign up to using these lines. It's provided a bit of a framework for that. And so what that shows is that if you settle on some messaging and you repeat that religiously over a course of time, you can slowly change perceptions around and hopefully bring about better coverage.
I'm conscious of time, so I think we'll take these as our last two questions. But if there's any more, we're on social media. But firstly, from Graham, in what ways do you find out if a campaign you have promoted has been worthwhile? Do you get various feedback, and can this prompt further action?
Well, with the a good example at the moment is how we're evaluating with the rehab work. We're looking at how often our messaging gets through, how often it's covered in a story, whereabouts in the story it is. So we're going with our 3 messages. How often is that appearing in the story? Did we have the spokesperson? Did we also have a third party quoted in that piece? What's important there is that we would say the physio is great, but if we've got an FCP story and it's GP quoted saying FCPs are fantastic, this is definitely what other GPs should do, that's really effective, because it means other GPs are probably going to, think, okay, well, if he's doing it, if she's doing it, let's go for it. Now, I think that's one of the things we measure for our success in terms of media coverage. In terms of bigger campaigns, it kind of depends what your objective is in the first place. But you look for things like sign-ups. You look for, if it's a behaviour change one, you do the follow-up research with your audience to see how likely they were to respond to what you're doing. There's various different measures. I mean, some campaigns are kind of awareness, and so you track the awareness at the start compared to the awareness at the end. Some of them are about a very specific action, where you want, say something like stop smoking. Did you increase the number of people accessing a smoking cessation service over that sort of 6-month period? Those are the kinds of ways that you can measure a campaign.
What are your thoughts on physios going it alone with their promotion, for example, on YouTube or Instagram versus official CSP content?
This is something I strongly support. This is we're no longer in a command and control world, and the media is not the only route. So, we've got large numbers of other people in other professions really building a strong profile to the external world. And I think it's a great thing for the profession if you've got someone giving that really kind of great advice. I think you need to be careful about various things, in terms of making sure your messaging is correct, it's evidence-based, up to date. But if you're doing that, I think it's great. There are a lot of physios who've got high profiles on social media tend to be kind of physio-facing. They're trying to sort of bring about change in the profession, and I think that more physios doing external stuff, fantastic. And also I think people's capability to do that is increased massively. Everyone's getting really comfortable using social media. Everyone's getting really comfortable with filming and all that kind of stuff. So if you've got those if you've got that ability, you've got those skills, and you've got that way of connecting with an audience, go for it. It's fantastic for the profession. Please do it.
Thank you, John. And thank you to everyone who's attended today, who's stayed a little bit extra time, and who's asked a question. Everyone have a lovely evening and take care. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Cheers out.